This is a quick video I wanted to share with the Christians. Basically, if we go back to the creation of man, God created Adam, the first man, and from Adam, he created his spouse, Eve. And from Adam and Eve, human beings have been reproduced through men and women coming together. Up until this day, there's been a countless amount of offspring from Adam and Eve. Now, in the very beginning, Adam and Eve, they dwelled in paradise. However, they were expelled from paradise because the sworn enemy to mankind, Satan, came and convinced them to disobey God by eating from the forbidden tree. He came to them, he lied to them. That is his goal, that is his purpose. He wants to lead human beings astray from obeying their Lord, from obeying God. So Adam and Eve, they were expelled from paradise to dwell on earth for an appointed amount of time. And here on earth, human beings would live, would die, and we would be resurrected and judged in the hereafter. So, this being the case, let's think about, from the time of Adam up until today, what has been the main message, the main purpose of the human being versus the purpose of Satan trying to lead us astray. Well, we know that Adam and Eve, they worshiped God alone. We know that for generations after them, for about 10 generations, all of the human beings, there was just one religion. They just worshiped, it was just the worship of God alone. Now, eventually, Satan came to human beings and he said, you guys should build statues of the righteous people who passed away. Therefore, when you see their statues, you will be reminded to be like them in obedience to God, to the one true God. Now, after those people who erected these statues passed away, later generations came, they saw these statues, and they didn't know these righteous people. They didn't know what these statues were for. So Satan came to them and said, your forefathers used to worship these statues. Now, this is what Satan does. Satan lies to human beings and tries to get them to go astray, particularly in disobeying God and particularly in worshiping other than God. So this was when idolatry, when worshiping other than God was introduced to the human being. And since that time, God has sent messengers and prophets to human beings when they go astray in this manner, when they start worshiping other than God. He sends prophets to proclaim the truth to them, to say, don't worship other than God. You have no true God except him. Do not worship the creation, rather worship the creator. So Noah was sent to these people, and this was his message. And this has always been the message of the prophets. Adam, he preached what? The worship of God alone. Noah, he preached what? The worship of God alone. Later on, you can see Abraham, for example. His people were worshiping the creation. They were worshiping idols. He preached against the worship of the sun, the moon, the stars, and the idols. He destroyed the idols. What did he call to? The worship of God alone. Moses, he went to the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh thought that he was a god. Moses said, no, you're not God. There's only one true God worthy of worship. The Jews, they eventually would worship an idol, the golden calf. Moses condemned them for this. What are you doing? Do not worship anything other than God. Worship God alone. This is the first commandment. Have no God before God. There's only one. So this brings us to Christianity, to Jesus. Now, throughout time, we see that, as we said, Satan goes to people and tries to get them to worship other than God. He tries to get them to worship statues, to worship the sun, the moon, the stars, idols, the golden calf, so on and so forth. Now, think about this. Jesus came, and is it possible that Satan came to the people after Jesus left and said, Jesus is the Son of God. Worship Jesus. Make an idol out of Jesus. So that people started worshiping Jesus. Because if you look at throughout history, throughout time, what was the religion of the one true God? It was monotheism. It was worshiping God alone. However, we see in modern Christianity, people worship Jesus. People worship Mary. People worship saints. So on and so forth. Is it possible, do you think, that perhaps this is from Satan trying to get people to worship other than God? And if not, if that's not the case, if Jesus truly did come and he truly did proclaim, I am the Son of God, worship me, or I am God, or devote your worship to me, and we're changing the religion, don't you think that should have been extremely explicitly made clear? Was it explicitly made clear? If you look at the history of how Jesus was perceived, don't you think if he was changing the history of the one true religion to worship him, don't you think that would have been the most clearly put thing that he could have possibly proclaimed to people? Because, for example, we see in Islam, We believe that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was sent to proclaim this message just like all of the past prophets. Don't take Jesus as an idol. Don't take Jesus as an idol the same way the people of Noah took statues as idols, or the people of Abraham or Moses. And likewise, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam came and said, do not worship other than God. Do not worship Jesus. And in the Quran, it is very clearly put. There's no doubt about it. Every verse, it calls to monotheism. There's no true God except God. Do not worship other than God. Do not worship the creation, worship the Creator. This is explicit throughout the entire Quran. It's the most explicit, most clear, most obvious thing in Islam. So in Christianity, if Jesus was calling people to worship him, shouldn't that have been made explicit, very clear? Now, this idea of him being the Son of God or being man, the Trinity, is it clear? When did it become clear? Did people come and have councils and decide what verses to add to the Bible? And did they go over the theology of Christianity? Did it change? How did this come about? Shouldn't Jesus have come if he was really proclaiming this message that he is God or the Son of God, or that there's a Trinity, that it should have been explicitly clear? So this is just something to think about. Or is it possible that, as the Quran says, on the day of judgment, Jesus will be asked by God, did you tell people to worship you? Did you tell people to take you and your mother as gods besides me? And he will say, I never proclaimed that. I only told people to worship you alone. So this is just something to think about. Thank you for watching.